the somewhat played out topic of cancel culture has come up a number of times. You know, everyone's throwing that phrase around. And there's been a lot of topics that pertain to it. Now, my original plan about a week ago was, well, not a week ago now, it's probably 2 weeks ago, was I was going to do a stream kind of talking about how people are losing their appetite for it, because it's gone from being sort of a tool which you use to apply pressure to public figures and prominent wealthy people, and it's essentially a minor inconvenience. But more often than not now, what we see is it's affecting just innocent everyday working folk, and people don't want to engage with that. Because why should someone who isn't a public figure get wrecked over a bad tweet they did to their mates, back, by the way, when Twitter was a way you communicated with friends? It wasn't about thrusting you into the fucking global public eye. It was like DMs. You know, people treated it like that. It's why everyone gets got the same way. People get got by just not going back and deleting tweets from 2009. Because back then, you literally just tweeted at your mates. In fact, Twitter doesn't even work the same as it used to back then. People were getting tired of it. What I want to do is I wanted to talk a lot about kind of like the shifting sands of cancel culture and how it was going away. And then, of course, we had the double whammy of Whoopi Goldberg and Joe Rogan occurring, where we saw two very different types of cancel culture running side by side with each other, didn't we? And keep in mind, these are both prominent media figures that have huge audiences. I know Joe Rogan, everyone talks about his viewer numbers. The View, I think it's one of the worst fucking things to happen to the human brain, that The View exists, but it has a huge audience. A lot of people watch it. And so we saw sort of parallel attempts to cancel. On the one side, we saw Whoopi Goldberg said some outrageous things about the Holocaust, showing a complete lack of historical understanding. She was then put on an apology tour where she went on Stephen Colbert, repeated the exact same things, and somehow that was fine. And then she was suspended for, wait for it, 2 weeks. And the reason for that, combination of things. First of all, The View is essentially propaganda for, all of the, for the fucking, the state apparatus around the fucking DNC machine. So she was always going to be treated with leniency because she's not an apostate. She's not a heretic. So that's okay. You get a slap on the wrist, but also the optics of firing one of the sort of few mainstream black female hosts of a TV show during Black History Month is terrible, and no corporate media owned outlet is going to go down that road because the backlash will not be worth it. The juice will not be worth the squeeze. So you had that. Meanwhile, Joe Rogan, on the other hand, for the crime of checks notes, platforming two medical professionals that probably have some pretty dodgy views on the coof, on ye old COVID, for that crime of having them on his podcast, had to be absolutely cancelled in a sustained media attack that lasted weeks. And by cancelled, as we'll get to eventually in this series of videos, he had 117 episodes of his podcast permanently removed from the platform. Had to apologise publicly, come under immense scrutiny over what type of guests he has and what topics he talks about, after Spotify sort of previously had agreed to no editorial input and had publicly said they don't have editorial input. And then on top of that, basically now is sort of been told, yeah, you've got to... you got to toe that corporate media line, but did hold on to his job because, again, essentially he is too big to cancel, despite all of the efforts, which we'll go into. So it turned out that even though we were sort of looking at what I thought was the end of cancel culture as a concept, we sort of had one last hurrah. And I'm intrigued to see where we end up at, because it hasn't really worked on Joe Rogan. They threw everything at him. They threw allegations of endorsing sexual abuse at him. They threw allegations of racism at him. They put together a video of him saying the N-word 15 years ago, or whatever it was, when people could say it within context because context existed back then. And now, in the current zeitgeist, we fire college professors for using it while quoting Martin Luther King. Who knew? Slippery slopes, eh? They threw that at him. Other musicians boycotted Spotify. People on TV were saying he's openly racist. He's a white supremacist. I mean, crazy where it got to. We had the government say Spotify has to do more to quell Joe Rogan. We had that, didn't we? So I thought I thought we was having the last of the summer wine with cancel culture, but we didn't. But anyway, I'm going to sort of try and give you a history of it all and explain why people object to it, why the media have kind of changed their tune a little bit about it, and why it's just generally kind of a bad thing and how it serves nobody. It's a tool that is wielded by people that can't control it, and generally, like an out-of-control jackhammer, it's going to come back and it's gonna fucking get them. So look, let's start by giving you a bit of history, because I think that is imperative to kind of understanding why it happens and who's really driving it, because like a lot of things that are bad on the internet, it is driven by American journalists. And what I want to do is I want to remind you that this is how fundamentally broken the American journalistic and American media landscape is. I want to remind you about a thing called Journalist, and some of you will be too young to remember it, but basically Journalist was a private Google group which all of the kind of left-leaning journalists joined up to. And it was created by Ezra Klein, who I'm sure you'll know him as a prominent left, media figure. The purpose of the group wasn't to discuss things that were going on between colleagues and professionals. No, as it was exposed later, these journalists, 400 of them, were all colluding to write the same stories and to push in the same direction, particularly around Obama and stuff like that. That was the purpose of this group. Now, for those that aren't journalists and aren't media students, that's terrible. I mean, that you are meant to serve your audience by giving them the facts, sure, or expressing opinions that you hold, sure, but first and foremost as well, you have to think about the masthead. You have to think about the publication you work at. What you write impacts on them. By the way, if you get caught writing something libelous, defamatory, false, and you get sued for it, it's not you as an individual who gets sued. The masthead protects you from that. And so obviously you have a responsibility to your publication, to the reputation of the publication, to every journalist that has worked at that publication before you and told the truth. And yet somewhere along the line, as the US media became more and more entrenched in pushing back against Bush, by the way, the Bush election, the one that wasn't rigged, pivotal moment in American history and pivotal moment in how we end up with a nightmarish digital landscape like what we've got now, because lefties said, right, the gloves are off now, fuck it. If they can be that dirty, we'll go to more extremes. And that's why you see this cultural shift where, I think Bush is the closest thing you are going to get to an evil totalitarian dictator in charge of America, although he's remembered fondly because he's learned how to paint now, unlike other leaders throughout history. Painters can do no wrong. And, they've now gone to a more insane extreme over on their side, and it's working. And it's why they occupy all of the kind of like powerful institutions now. And, I'd say 70% of the media landscape sort of contains one particular message. It sort of starts here with Journalist. It's what it was all about. Now, anyway, it got shut down in 2010 because a bunch of other journalists, including Tucker Carlson, who I think was at CNN at the time, because Tucker Carlson used to work at CNN. Probably not a lot of you know that either. That was a long time ago. But I think Tucker Carlson might have been at CNN, or certainly it might have been just after he joined Fox. But anyway, it was all exposed, and basically it turns out they were colluding on stories. They were like saying, we need the messaging to be this way. We got to do this. We got to do that. And they came out. They tried to defend it. There was a spin-off as well called The Kabbalist, which was started by Jonathan Cohn, which basically had former journalist members that came into it, and then that got exposed as well, and then it all got shut down. Now, why am I telling you about this? Because what you have to understand is this never went away. This never went away. You saw something like this in the gaming space, around Gamergate, the evil, ooh, Gamergate. They were all in cahoots with each other, all in groups, all talking to each other, all planning, sustained offences against particular things, particular people, coordinated hit pieces. And that's how journalists think now. Journalists blurred the line with activism at this moment in time. And so this hasn't gone away. Journalists are now in Slack groups with each other, Discords with each other, email chains with each other. They're still doing it. That's why when you wake up in the morning and go, I'll just check the news, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, all of the other fucking letters, almost every network is telling the same story, right? They're telling the same story in the same way, using the same repeated phrases and the same talking points. The group think has come together, or they've had their marching orders from the DNC. Somebody will send them an email going, I really think it would be good if we talked about Tucker Carlson's abuse of AOC on his most recent show. And bang, you get 20 think pieces about that spread across all the usual suspects within a day or two of each other. This is a phenomenon that happens all of the time. Think about, there was a run of articles recently, why inflation is good. I could show you that. Like dozens of articles about how, no, shut up, stupid. So what if the price of milk goes up? It's like, who genuinely thinks that? You would have to be a journalist in a bubble who doesn't shop at a supermarket, it's never been to a Walmart, to even think inflation could be a good thing and that it's not really hurting people who've just come out of a 2-year fucking pandemic. Many people have lost their jobs, lost their homes, lost their healthcare, and now we've got record levels of inflation, the highest it's been since 82 in America. And the media are being told, okay, yep, inflation is good and this is why. Dozens of them. That doesn't happen by accident. It couldn't happen by accident. Somebody would have to break away from the groupthink if it happened organically. You would see a spectrum of opinions. But what the American media is really good at doing is they tell you the grounds for discussion like this. But in reality, what they've done is they have closed off a part of it. This is the acceptable parameters of discourse. When in reality, the fucking parameters are this wide. But they're not. They say, look, we got the left over here and the right. You can't say anything on these sides anymore. It's a spell. It's a trick. So, journalists love cancel culture. They love cancel culture. They love it because what it enables them to do is wield power. And power, there is no greater power, by the way, than holding dominion over someone's livelihood, being able to ruin their reputation, having them cast out from communities as pariahs. It's one of the last actual weapons journalists have. No one takes them seriously in the sense that, the average person is skeptical when a journalist writes something, I would say. It's not brainwashing anyone. It's just the people who agree are already indoctrinated. And people are, you can see from the Pew numbers and everything, people don't trust the media anymore. It's at an all-time fucking low. And the media think, well, if we attack Joe Rogan, that'll fix everything. It's like, no, guys, that's not what's going on at all. You need to get rid of all the bad faith actors that you have allowed to take over the space. Get out of those fucking echo chamber groups where you fucking coordinate attacks against people and do some actual fucking journalism for 5 minutes. Cover some big fucking stories, But no, it's a machine. It's state media. It's there to serve the status quo and nothing else, and it doesn't give a fuck about you. And as a result, one of the things journalists love is being able to attack the little guy. You see, they get their orders from the corporations and the politicians and the celebrities that are above them, but not always. There's a hierarchy within a hierarchy, let's say. And then the journalists, well, it's like the old saying, the abused kick downwards. So the journalists wanting to show that they are still part of essentially the ruling class, the media class, and you are but serfs and peasants and peons to them. Cancel culture is the most effective tool that they can wield against you. If you've ever done anything bad, they can come after you, blow it up on their huge platforms, but both individual and as part of the masthead, the network, or the publication they work for, and fuck your life up. They did it with a little old lady who was in a Facebook group. Did you know this was funded by Putin? CNN on her doorstep. She's 62 years old, and they're harassing her. They did it with a guy who made a fucking meme of Donald in one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen CNN trafficking. By the way, I will be doing an entire bit on CNN and the rise of the thug journalist. So glad Zucker got his comeuppance, but there's still a number of motherfuckers over there that have got to fucking get fired and be held accountable for the heinous fucking shit they did. You know how many of those people, by the way, are like facing like lawsuits, allegations of sexual assault, having to settle because they assaulted people and shit. It's a fucking disgrace over there. And it's all been encouraged by the guy who just got fired. But anyway, they literally fucking essentially doxed a guy who created a meme of Donald Trump punching the CNN logo using footage from Donald Trump's appearance at like WrestleMania or SmackDown. And then they found out who he was, doxed him, made him publicly apologize, and then they put an article out saying, we won't reveal his identity because he's apologized for making the meme, but we reserve the right to reveal his identity if he ever recants that apology. How is that fucking acceptable? That guy, by the way, who that happened to, he should have lawyered up immediately, and I'll tell you why he didn't, because it would have made all his details public anyway. It would have foregone the purpose. But that's got to be a slam dunk. I can't believe any media outlet is fucking allowed to do that, and that's just allowed to go by the wayside. And motherfuckers like that K-File or whatever his fucking name is, he's out there publicly saying, we never did that. You fucking did. You undeniably did. We all know you did. The evidence is there. You did it. And you see, they love it, the journalists. They fucking love it. It is the thing that separates them from you. That and their unbelievably privileged backgrounds that they generally all come from. But, you know, they have tools at their disposal. You can't. So you better be careful. You better never call them the enemy of the people. You better never say that they're liars. You better never send them mean tweets, or they will fuck up your whole life. That, and pretty much that alone, is what cancel culture is about. Now, actually, not all of it, because there are two types of cancel culture, and I want to be very clear here, right? There was a divergence. Like, cancel culture didn't even mean anything when that phrase first came out, right? Cancel culture just sort of meant, this person said something that I don't think belongs in our community, whatever that community may be. Let's ostracize them. That's what it meant. You are cancelled. That's what it meant. You know, we're just not going to fuck with you anymore, right? And that's fine, by the way. That's not a big deal. It's unpleasant for a day or two, but all it really means is, look, the group has decided you're not part of the group. A perfectly normal experience that almost everyone will go through at some point. Whether you get dropped from a sports team, whether you fall out with friends, whether you're, you know, kind of like on the fringes at school and not in with the cliques. Humans do this. We get in a cliques and then we decide who can and can't be part of it. You know, you never really grow out of that, no matter what people say. It's pretty much what all of this shit's about now. If you ever, again, it's why the internet's a cesspit, because it is just clique after clique. So I don't even have too much of a problem with that. It's funny because cancelling and driving someone out is good. Gatekeeping and not letting someone in is bad. Think about that. Yep. That link, you know, there's no consistency in any of this behavior. Basically, we've created a set of rules on the internet that just allow us to be awful to each other as often as possible for minor and petty disagreements. And because social media is only good for one thing, and that is highlighting a witch hunt, everybody gets to participate in Salem. Everyone gets to participate in McCarthyism. Everyone gets their fucking, 15 minutes of hate. Everybody gets it. All you have to do is go viral, and every day somebody does. You notice that? You ever noticed how when you log on to Twitter, some cunt's always getting dragged? It never ends. There is a fucking designated person, who just gets wrecked. Like, there was that one dude, right, did a tweet, bad tweet, right, said something, what was it? My kid couldn't open... I told my kids that they had to learn how to cook their own dinner, and they couldn't open a tin of beans. So there's always beans. So I let them go hungry, and it was called Bean Dad. And so they doxed him and went into all... Now, that's a terrible tweet, and he's a cunt, probably. I don't know. But does the whole of does the whole world have to go after this guy? Do we all have to go after fucking Bean Dad? Is this the real shit? And it turns out in the moment it is, because the other good thing, the seductive component of cancel culture. If I'm dragging you, you're not dragging me. If I'm dragging you, I'm not thinking about all the bad shit. I'm not thinking about all the horror, the existential nightmare that exists outside of the digital world. As long as I keep dragging you and saying the right things, they'll never get me. They'll never come for me. And also as well, there's like some weird fucked up joy in the cruelty of it all. Like the abused kick downwards. This is a known psychological phenomenon. It's a type of online digital torture and people relish in it. They relish in it. It is the Stanford prison experiment wrote large across the internet. Everybody does it. You have the option to press the button to electrocute someone. And by that, I mean tweet something abusive at them. You know, highlight their tweet to thousands, hundreds of thousands of followers. You can choose not to do it. You don't have to do it. But fuck it, man. They're the monster of the day, right? I'm doing good. So cancel culture really fucking scaled up in a short period of time. Started out, you're just a pariah because of a bad tweet or a bad opinion, or you lied to some people, and actually it's good that you sort of cast out into the wilderness of the internet. No harm, no foul. And suddenly it became this huge thing. And as I said, I recommend anybody reads the John Ronson book, You Have Been Publicly Shamed. It's like, it tells a ton of these stories. It's really fucking brutal. These people are, you know, once it happens to you, you'll know. And so when we get to the point where it's villain of the day on Twitter, monster of the day on Twitter, there's a divergence because people got a taste for taking on bigger targets. People wanted to target celebrities. How much can we do? And so, interestingly, it's always been framed as a way to address the power differential. That's what a lot of people who engage in cancel culture say. They say, listen, all these motherfuckers talk about cancel culture and they get a book deal and they get a network TV show and, you know, yeah, so what? All we did was cost them a few sponsors. All we did was get their show took away. They'll be back in a few years. It's a way that we can, you know, the little guy. And it's like, well, obviously, you know, taking away anyone's livelihood's not good. I mean, you know, even people who might have enough money to get by, and certainly it's not going to hurt them long term, you're still engaging in almost feral mob-like mentality, going after someone generally predicated on the fact they said something that you don't like. But you had that divergence that way. That was the fork in the road. Cancel culture is okay because it doesn't really hurt anybody because we're only going after the wealthy and the powerful. And then you had this other one. Anyone who does anything bad at any point in their life on the internet that can be quantifiably assessed and curated deserves punishment upon its discovery. This is the dark road of cancel culture. That's the one I care about. We will talk about Rogan and Whoopi Goldberg and all that stuff later. But let's get into this road first of all, because that isn't fair. That's not fair. That is not fair at all. And it's horrible. And I'm going to show you some examples that are going to blow your mind because the journalists sensing that we are starting to lose our taste for cancel culture, or accountability culture as they started to rebrand it. What they started to do was coordinate and do a bunch of articles all saying, listen, guys, it's fine. It's just normal. This is a good thing that's happening. Ruining people's lives, driving people to the brink of suicide or worse, because they did a tweet when they were a child that had a no word in it. This is good. This is helping society improve. So, before we get to that, right, I want to highlight a great essay. I read a guy called Freddie DeBoer. You can get his stuff. I think he's on Substack. And I recommend, if you get a chance, sign up to his stuff. I think he's a righteous writer who has tapped into the fundamental problem of where we're at. And he wrote a very famous essay called Planet of Cops, right? I'm going to read some of that now. Fortunately, I can read it because he's a talented guy who suffers from bipolar disorder, and he wrote this when he had a sort of bipolar episode. And so for him, and I understand this as a writer myself, sometimes you write things and they're so inextricably tied up in where you are at a certain time and place in your life, a certain moment, that it's very hard and painful to even see them be read by other people or to see them shared online, because you give over a part of your soul, part of your personality to that creation. So he is a fantastic writer, and I'm going to read you an extract from this. It's a short essay anyway. I recommend you go and read the whole thing. You can see here, this is the new foreword he's added, where he just says that he erased it, and Jesse Single, who 2014 Gamergate survivors will remember, he was called Virtue Single for a while, definitely leveled up his game in how he's thinking about things these days, and good for him. He's actually a good follow on Twitter and somebody I'd really like to get on the show one day. He took the essay and saved it, and then with Freddie's permission he re-uploaded it later before Freddie got his own Substack, and yeah, here it is. The irony of our vibrant and necessary police reform movement. So this was, by the way, written at a time when obviously defund the police, reform the police. This was a swirling maelstrom of ideas that were taking place. By the way, something that absolutely has to happen in America. It's just the sloganeering, the messaging is not on point. And also the idea, less money makes for better cops. Good luck with that one. Anyway, topic for another time. The irony of our vibrant and necessary police reform movement is that it's happening simultaneously to everyone becoming a cop. I mean everyone. Liberal, conservative, radical and reactionary, blogger, activist, pundit and writer, obviously, but also teacher, tailor and candlestick maker. Cops, all of them. Cops everywhere. Everybody a cop. Conservatives have always been cops. And obviously, I mean the literal cops, the professionals. They tend to have a reactionary bent, right? But the people flooding the FCC with complaints about Janet Jackson's nipple, they're cops. William Burroughs summarised the whole social conservative movement perfectly as decent church-going women with their mean-pinched, bitter, evil faces. People who knock on their neighbours are cops, and people who want to scour test scores to get teachers fired are cops, and people who want to keep an eye on trans people when they go to the bathroom are cops, obviously. Drug test people on food stamps, strip search Muslims at the airport. Let me see your papers, please. Conservatives were born cops. They always have been. They always will be. Milo Yiannopoulos, that pathetic hypocrite who a couple of months ago was talking about free speech on campus, he's a cop too. The alt-right play up their laughable renegade credentials, but when they aren't calling the literal cops for a swatting, they're crying to the mods, bitching about unequal enforcement of rules on Twitter, or turning the tables by crying for the whatever authority to come rescue them. Just more cops. Demos firing Matt Brunig because someone dropped a dime on him to powerful people. The little army of snitches who have written to my employers and tried to divest me of my job. The self-appointed Twitter police. They're in every subculture of that forum who constantly start shit, DMing people to berate them for who they follow or whose work they boost. The ones who keep an Oppo file on everybody, who try and regulate other people's friendships. The ones who keep a big file folder of screen grabs just waiting to play judge and jury. They're cops. By the way, that means I'm a cop too. Dead man's drive. I'm a cop. The woke world is a world of snitches, informants, rats. Go to any space concerned with social justice and what will you find? Endless surveillance. Everybody is to be judged. Everybody is under suspicion. Everything you say is to be scoured, picked over, analysed for any possible offence. Everyone's a detective in the division of problematics, and they walk the beat 24/7. You search and search for someone bad doing bad things, finding ways to indict writers and artists and ordinary people for something, anything. That movie that got popular, give me a few hours and 800 words. I'll get you your indictments. That's what liberalism is now. The search for baddies doing bad things, like little offence archaeologists, digging deeper and deeper to find out who's good and who's bad. I wonder why people run away from establishment progressivism in droves. I'll read you the last bit. You know who weren't cops? all the radicals and queers and artists and dreamers that were there while I grew up, my mom and dad's old friends from New York and the wider bohemian world, the actors and the drag queens and the dilettantes and the ex-junkies and the current junkies, the kind of queer people who wouldn't get caught dead getting married, the people who actually made the old New York of the myth into what it was. They were smart and they were funny and they were tougher than I can imagine, and they were possessed of an existential commitment to the idea that life is complicated and so we shouldn't be quick to judge. They were tolerant in the true sense, even while they were tireless advocates for actual justice. They knew that genuinely progressive left-wing people had to embody a rejection of the old moralisms. They weren't religious, but they embraced Christian forgiveness more than any people I've ever known. They were the kind to say to newcomers at AA meetings, I don't care who you are or what you've done, you're welcome here. Most of them are dead now from AIDS or cancer or drugs or just living life. I miss them so fucking much. I miss when we were the cool ones, the implacable ones, the ones too principled to judge. Now, we're Rudy Giuliani, trying to get offensive art pulled off the walls. Now we're the book burners. Now we're the censors. Now we attack the ACLU for defending free speech. Now we screech about community morals. Now we're the prison camp screws. That's us. Me, I could never be one of the good ones. Never. I can never live up to that ideal. I know I'm not good enough. I know when the judgment day comes, I go down, and so I decline. And you can decline too. You can say I decline the opportunity to be a cop. But people are scared because they think, probably correctly, that if they aren't a cop, they'll end up a criminal. Well, I have no choice. I am not one of the goodies. So there you go. It's a fantastic essay. Really taps in to how I feel. You know, the first time I read this, it was like, that was it. That was what was going on upstairs in my brain. When I thought of liberalism and the liberal movement and the working class liberal movement, we were the people who fucking literally were just like, if you look, it's the them and us isn't sideways, it's up and down. That, you know, if you're here with me, like, it doesn't matter what sexuality you are or what gender you are or what race you are or what religion you are or what your identity is, none of that matters. We're all here, right? And they're there. Well, that was how my worldview was passed. I never fucking had a problem with anybody based on anything like that. And I remember it being that way. I remember there being this kind of like, you know, joie de vivre about fucking hanging out with a collection of people who were just legitimately interesting. I prided myself on my friends group being diverse. I prided myself on like knowing people who were on that fringe, who other people would kind of dismiss and think were crazy. Those stuffy conservative Christian types, the people that looked down on them. I liked it when art was fucking radical. But, you know, I thought it was hilarious when we got the parental advisory stickers on fucking rap albums, you know, as if America couldn't be any more backwards in its thinking, that if I heard the word fuck, somehow it was going to turn me into a Satanist. And keep in mind, I'm old enough, I lived through the satanic panic. It was all so absurd, and it felt like, at that moment, legitimately we were getting to a good place, that by even the early 2000s, we saw this pushback against what happened in the post 9/11 world. And we weren't going to subscribe to George Bush's bullshit. And we weren't going to allow the Muslim community to be demonized. We weren't going to let working class people be shipped off to war to die for bullshit, for provable lies. And we went on marches. And we did it together. One big, fucked up, dysfunctional family that genuinely cared about each other. And you would never have dreamed for social points or clout. You would never have dreamed that you would snitch on any of them or you would fuck any of them over. That you would do anything but stand with them shoulder to shoulder. And I think about where we are now, and it's tragic. It's depressing. I think about how I wake up every day and I live in fucking constant fear. I've said some fucked up shit. I've said the N-word within context back when, you know, I've got an interview with me and Destiny talking about it at an event. Is that going to be cut up out of context? Are they going to come for me? Am I bad? Am I radicalizing people? Is that what they're going to say? It's every day. It's one bad tweet, one joke that blows up. It's having to parse everything you do, think, feel, say, all of the interactions. Having to sit down before I come on a stream to talk to you guys and thinking, shit, I better double check all the links. I better, well, what if there's a no-no word in the middle of an article and I miss it? What if a video, it suddenly has something in it that I've missed and my brain's not paid attention to it? What if a pop-up ad for lingerie pops up and there's a bit bit too much boob and a bit too much cleavage. What will they do? What will they say? That is an oppressive nightmare. Really, because it's not just for people like me, it is for normal folk. It's for, and by that I mean, like, I know I've got a privileged fucking gig. Like, I've made my money, I can fucking roll up, talk to people, I get sponsors, people pay me to talk. It's never lost on me how mad and profound that is to a kid who was told, you talk too much at school and you will never amount to anything because of it. But what about people who have to get up and do the factory job? Many people in my community, many people on my Discord, the message I get is thanks for putting out so much long-form content because I do 8-hour shifts of mind-numbing work and it helps. What about those people losing a job because maybe they're in the wrong Discord at the wrong time and somebody says something and somebody sends it to their employers on some fucked up internet beef? Like, this is no way to live. We are not meant to live like this. And it's everything that's wrong with the internet. It's why suicides are up. It's why young people are basically now pre-packaged with body issues and image issues and fear, horrible stories. Go look at that story about the teenage girl that killed herself because another teenage girl goaded her into saying the N-word, said, I bet you won't say it, dare you, dare you, dare you, filmed her, uploaded it to a group, the school found out, and she was convinced her life was over. She was saying to people, I can never do anything now, I can never have a job, and she killed herself, like 14. We are doing this to each other. We don't have to. Sure, we can hold powerful people accountable. Yeah, I'm all for that. I'm all for activism. I'm all for grassroots activism. I'm all for pushing back against power structures, right? But we ain't doing that. We're letting the power structures dictate to us what we push back against. And guess what they suggest? Each other. Always. You fight the culture war because they tell you to fight that. So while you're fighting a culture war, you ain't fighting a class war. That's what's been going on. And so we're trapped in, there's a concept called the Panopticon. It's boring, it's overplayed, but it's the idea that, you're in a prison where everybody's watching everyone else all the time. Constant surveillance organically from within it. And that's what we do. It's mad. I care less about that cancel culture where you shoot upwards. I definitely care about the destructive power and the normalization of going after your fucking fellow person, just another working class person trying to live. And they've made the fatal mistake of trying to engage with people on the internet. And maybe they've said something in the past. It's not that I condone saying the bad things. It's that whatever happened to clemency, whatever happened to forgiveness, whatever happened to context, whatever happened to apologies fucking mattering, for fuck's sake. Can you even apologize these days? No, because what happens is you apologize and the person you apologize to might forgive you, but then it gets brought up again and again and again. The internet remembers forever and you will be made to remember your fucking worst moment for the rest of your life. You can't get away from it. It's not like how it was 20 years ago. Thank fuck. You wouldn't have heard of me if motherfuckers were following me with fucking cameras. I was wild. I make no bones about it. I came out of my teenage years psychologically damaged after years of abuse. I was angry. I was fucking angry. I was a legitimate unpleasant person. I make no fucking bones about it. I did things I would love to be able to take back. And if you knew what those things were, if you knew some of the things I'd said, or some of the views I'd held, or some of the fucking, outrageous drunken outbursts I'd engaged in, you would fucking hate that person. I hate that person. Fortunately, I existed at a time when I was allowed to grow and explore and make mistakes without being beaten over the head for the rest of my life. I got to mellow out, chill out, work through that anger. None of you will be ever afforded that right. Ever again. And that's wrong. That is a crime. Back to the journalists. And by the way, Freddie DeBoer did a follow-up essay to that called, in fact, let me just show it to you, because it's another great piece of writing and definitely relevant to what we're talking about here. Perhaps you should not spend all day ridiculing others from afar. Yes, you can hold others up for ritualistic communal disdain, but why? And you can go and read that. And again, echoes pretty much all of my sentiments about I don't understand why we do this to each other. But anyway, let's get back to the journalists, right? Let's look at just some examples of this blanket press, this unbelievable kind of, fucking just aggressive like insistence that somehow cancel culture is fine. You know, I'll start with CNN. CNN, obviously, as I just alluded to, some of the most egregious examples of going after the little guy, wielding their almighty power like a cudgel and doming your head in, forever having the nerve to disagree with them when they are fucking scum. They are liars. They take money from corporations. They work on behalf of a political party, essentially, and they just espouse propaganda, all the while telling you only we can tell you the truth. Fox News does the same thing we do. They're bad, but we're good. We're on the right side. It's fucking garbage. But look, it's time to cancel the talk of cancel culture, they said. What is cancel culture, they say? Now, again, I think I've laid out a pretty good primer. Cancel culture, as it's understood today, isn't real. Not only do people and things allegedly cancelled by this imaginary movement often prevail in the end, the whole concept is a smokescreen to distract from actual systemic forces of suppression. Let's take a look at some recent victims of so-called cancel culture. Dr. Seuss Enterprises, the group that by the way, I don't even think anyone thought about this, but let's do it. Dr. Seuss Enterprises, the group that handles the iconic author's legacy, announced a handful of his titles out of dozens will no longer be printed or sold because of racist depictions within the book. I mean, you could just redo the artwork, but fine. These books are not illegal to own, and in fact, many libraries have said they're actively finding ways to keep these titles on their shelves with context around their troubling content. Still, some people cry cancel culture, and within days, mainstream Seuss titles like The Cat in the Hat were topping the bestsellers list. Best-selling country artist Morgan Wallen faced criticism after he was caught saying a racial slur on camera. Some radio stations decided to stop playing his songs, but they climbed up the Spotify charts nonetheless, and his album sales and social media followers skyrocketed. So far, his career has certainly not been cancelled. Neither were the careers of Lana Del Rey, Doja Cat, Camila Cabello, Justin Bieber, or any other singers accused of racist speech. Gina Carano, who played a supporting role on Disney's The Mandalorian, was fired after comparing the treatment of conservatives to the Holocaust. Not something she did, by the way, that's a lie. She's not banned from getting work, and in fact has already landed herself another gig funded by the conservative pundit Ben Shapiro. There you go, guys. It's all right, because even though, yeah, books do get banned from being sold, but I mean, they're still out there. If you can find a copy, you can buy it. No harm, no foul, right? Nothing's been cancelled there, right? Someone gets fired for just essentially saying, like, let's not dehumanize other in a difficult time. That's what she really said. She didn't draw any direct comparisons. Not that I agree with it. I think maybe just leave the Holocaust out your fucking mouth, frankly, but whatever. That's by the by. It's perfectly fine she doesn't get to work for Disney ever again. That's fine, right? Because after all, I mean, working with Ben Shapiro at the Daily Wire is the fucking same, right? Nothing to worry about, guys. They prevail in the end. But forget that. I don't even give a fuck about these people, as you'll see, as we'll get to. So there you go. Cancel culture's not real, guys. Don't get upset about it. Don't get upset about it. It's all in your mind. I'll just show you the headline from Rolling Stone. We'll pick the pace up a bit because I have waxed the real case of censorship that proves cancel culture outrageous bullshit. Right-wing pundits are ready to go off at a business decision they don't like, but when it comes to real censorship of a student who cares about trans rights, they've been silent. And yeah, by the way, let me tell you, yes, is there rampant hypocrisy in this? Of course. That's the game, by the way. It's another reason why the only smart way to traverse all this is just not to play, because the left wing will say, when the right wing do this, it's bad, and then do the same. The right wing will say, when the left wing does this, it's bad, and then they'll do the same and try and jazz it up. It goes from social media nonsense right the way up to the filibuster is a relic of Jim Crow. Now let's use the filibuster. You know, it's nonsense. When our team does it, it's fine. When your team does it, it's bad. New Statesman, you can just see there. This is an article called Cancel Culture Doesn't Exist. What does the phrase mean? And is it useful at all? And in that article, again, they go on to say, basically, it's not real. But you see, the problem is, cancel culture obviously blew up, right? It's a phrase people started to know, started to talk about, started to trend on social media. So now we get a bit of a shift, don't we? And you see, here it is. It's time to cancel culture. Let's rebrand it. It's the same heinous shit. It's the same McCarthyist shit, but we'll just call it accountability culture. No problem, guys. No problem. Let's just cancel it, right? It starts with an outrageous premise. Public figures have increasingly confabulated cancel culture or been cancelled themselves in recent years Bill Cosby, cancelled. Harvey Weinstein, cancelled. They are fucking sexual predators and criminals. No one thinks they've been cancelled. If anything, they haven't been held accountable enough for their fucking crimes. Forbes. Is cancel culture really just long overdue accountability for the privileged? Okay? Now, focus on that word, privileged. Keep that in your mind when I start showing you some of these examples that we're going to get into. And you tell me if this is fucking, privileged people having their lives ruined. NPR, everyone's favorite. They went with something a bit more like how cancel culture became politicized, just like political correctness did. And in this, they sort of diminish it and say it's all an invention of Trump and the right wing. It's a way to stop being held accountable for their awful antics and basically a way to sort of demonize, the good, benevolent lefties. The Washington Post went with a tribute to Captain America, I assume. So you're being held accountable. That's not cancel culture, they said. So again, you're just being held accountable. It's not cancel culture. And then also we had Hollywood Insider, because we'll just throw them in, because why not? Cancel culture isn't real. It's just called accountability. Be anti-cancel culture and pro-accountability. One of our team, don't cancel her, hold her accountable. So it went through this big rebranding. It's interesting because there was a new study actually that came out, which I'll get into. I mean, first, by the way, somebody did the etymology, a study of the official etymology and background of cancel culture, right? Which I thought was funny. You can go see this up on Sage Journals, and you can see, look, the Drag Them, it's called, the essay. A brief etymology of so-called cancel culture. The term cancel culture has significant implications for defining discourses of digital and social media activism. In this essay, I briefly interrogate the evolution of digital accountability praxis as performed by Black Twitter, a meta-network of culturally linked communities online. I trace the practice of the social media call-out from its roots in Black vernacular tradition to its misappropriation in the digital age by social elites, arguing that the application of youthful anger by a minoritized people and groups has been effectively harnessed in social media spaces as a strategy for networked framing of extant social problems. This strategy is challenged, however, by the dominant culture's ability to narrativize the process of being cancelled as a moral panic with the potential to upset the concept of a limited public sphere. So yeah, they do take this stuff pretty seriously. Drag them all. So far, I think we're all like, how bad can cancel culture actually be, Richard? I think, you're involved in a lot of hyperbole and, obviously you would say this. You're an edgy online personality. So yes, you would say this. Let me just give you another example here. This was from October 2021. You tell me if this is a reasonable occurrence. So this is a story about two people who had their lives ruined because somebody took a screenshot of a play fight out of context and decided they wanted to ruin their lives in the name of social progress or something. So here we go. This is a story about Ontario. Judge finds Ontario women were defamed in social media firestorm over alleged George Floyd post. You can see the picture there. This is Shania Lavelle posted a video on Snapchat of a singer, Justine, play fighting with Shania's boyfriend. Shania and Justine ended up fired from their jobs. And you can see he's got her on the ground. He's got a hand pinned behind there. And in this moment, he has a knee on her back. This video was posted not long after the George Floyd murder. And so somebody took it upon themselves to take a screenshot from that video, put it out on Twitter, put it out on social media, and say they were trivializing the death of George Floyd and that these people had to face consequences. I will now read you the story of how bad it got. In the spring of 2020, just 5 days after the death of George Floyd in Minnesota had kicked off massive protests over police brutality, Shania Lavelle, I should say, not Lavelle, posted a video on Snapchat of her sister Justine play fighting with her boyfriend, as they often did. But within days, A screenshot from the video that showed the boyfriend kneeling on Justine's back was used to ignite a social media firestorm, and all hell broke loose for the Lavallee sisters. Shania and Justine were fired from their jobs, one at the Canada Border Services Agency, one at a local Boston Pizza, because obviously you couldn't be allowed to have a pizza job for something as heinous as this, and had other job offers revoked, including Shania's upcoming job as a teacher. Their home address, phone numbers, and email addresses were posted online, leading to the family's home being egged, their neighbour's car getting damaged, it was parked nearby, and harassing phone calls pouring in, causing the family to vacate their home for a week. The facts of the case, as laid out in the Ontario Superior Court defamation ruling, show what happens when a snippet of social media is taken from its context and turned into a full-blown mobbing by total strangers. The sisters were castigated as privileged white girls from an Ottawa suburb. In fact, they are both Inuit through their mother's side and are registered members of the Native Alliance of Quebec. The online frenzy was initiated when one of Shania's followers took a screenshot of the video and shared it with their own followers. That screenshot was then seen by another Ottawa woman, Solid Isaac, who is black and was deeply involved in the Black Lives Matter movement and activism on social media. Isaac had never met the Lavallees and had not seen the original video, but believed the screenshot showed a racist act of mocking Floyd's death. At the time, there were some notorious social media posts called the George Floyd Challenge, and this is also true. There were people posting some really vile shit at that moment in time. This got conflated with that. Based on the screenshot, Isaac waged a social media campaign against the sisters, posting more than 100 messages, slamming them as racists and calling on people to message the sisters' employers and get them fired. Her followers picked up the cause, as did a handful of media outlets. My, the journalists are at it again. So Shania is behind one of the videos and in school to become a teacher, so one of Isaac's posts documented in the court ruling. You all really want her teaching our black babies? Email them. Don't be shy, attack some more, said another one. In capitals, you and your girlfriend make a very ugly couple. Let's get him too, guys. We're almost there, guys. Tag the Ottawa Catholic School Board in the recent post. DM them. Let them know you refuse to have her in the same room as our black youth. Another post shared Shania's phone number and email address. Quit playing behind that screen, Isaac wrote. As the attacks came in, Shania posted an apology on her social media, but insisted people were misunderstanding what happened. In the video, they were play fighting, as they always do, and in retrospect, I could see how the video could be taken out of context, given the current situation, and I now see how insensitive it is. It was wrong of me to be inconsiderate of the sensitive times, and by no means did I use this as a representation of what happened with George Floyd. By the way, never apologise. Never apologise, never explain. They fucking got you in the Kafka trap once you do that. It was no use. The consequences came fast and furious. Shania was immediately fired from a part-time job at the Boston Pizza in Ottawa Orleans neighbourhood, where she'd worked for 5 years. This type of rhetoric absolutely does not represent the restaurant's values and culture, said a Boston Pizza representative, quoted in the Toronto Star. And I want you to just ponder that for a moment. The fucking the values and culture of Boston Pizza. What would they be? Paying derisory fucking wages to hard workers, firing them without anything as an investigation to make sure your Yelp rating doesn't tank. Well, I do wonder about your fucking culture and values, yeah. Shania was due to start work with the Ottawa Catholic School Board in the fall, but that offer was rescinded. Justine was a casual worker with the Canada Border Services Agency, hoping to be taken on permanently. The CBSA posted a notice saying they were investigating the video, then subsequently just announced Justine was no longer working for them. The court ruling says the CBSA also revoked an offer of permanent employment to Justine. Later, she was rejected by the RCMP due to a character check that she believes must be referencing the screenshot, given she has a clean record otherwise. And by the way, guys, all of you who fucking mock the social credit score system in China, we've had it. We just don't call it that. And trust me, not only have we got it, and not only is it getting worse, we're directly copying what's going on in China. Be under no illusion. You have given your employers the right to check your social media, And we've all just accepted that as a normal thing that happens. Well, if it's there in public, it's perfectly fine that somebody makes a determination about whether you're fit to do a particular job. No, there used to be boundaries. We used to have these things called boundaries. I come, I sell my soul, you pay me money for it, I go home, and then I get to do what the fuck I want in my spare time, to say what I want, think what I want, and it's none of your business. You pay me for the labor, not my fucking personality. But no, we don't do that anymore. And we all just said, well, of course not. You allow them to do this. Shania's boyfriend was fired from his construction job. Unsuccessful attempts were made to get the Lavallee's mother, Kalinda, fired from her job as an educational assistant at the Ottawa Catholic School Board. Other articles appeared, including in Vice News and a Financial Post column, analysing the employer's legal situation. However, in an October 7th ruling, Justice Mark Smith found the sisters were defamed by Isaac and ordered Isaac to pay $100,000 in general damages plus legal costs, though he acknowledged the sisters are unlikely to ever see this money given Isaac is young and was unemployed at the time of her testimony. He also ordered Isaac to remove the damaging posts and to permanently refrain from publishing or encouraging anyone else to publish defamatory statements about the Lavallees. Smith concluded Isaac's actions were vicious, misplaced, and are deserving of punishment, but also impulsive, naive, and misguided, given Isaac was motivated by combating anti-black racism. So there you go. A completely unemployed, right? An unemployed, just someone with a handful of followers on Twitter with an axe to grind can fuck up the lives of 4 people permanently, be found guilty of doing that in a court, ordered to pay $100,000, a derisory amount that will not cover the loss of money for all of those people who have been affected, and she won't even have to pay it anyway because she can't. That is the stacked deck that you face with cancel culture. But journalists will tell you this is fine. This is accountability. Accountability for what, by the way? It was insensitive of me to post a funny video during a time of internet hysteria. Right, great, good. Lesson learned. Another example. I've got them all queued up for you. You'll like this one, guys, because we get to revisit some old school shit that we've talked about on the channel before. This one blew my mind when I saw it coming across Twitter, because this guy was the villain of the day. Remember, Americans are still telling the lie that this is a white supremacist dog whistle, when in actual fact it never was, it never has been, and journalists fell for a hoax, and rather than accept that they fell for a hoax, they will perpetuate the lie until the end of fucking time. And we'll let them. We'll just let them do it, apparently. And some people, fearing reprisals, because everyone is terrified of cancel culture, everyone is terrified of the mob coming for them, people will go along with the lie. Yes, the Emperor's clothes look really good, don't they? He's fucking naked, you morons. Have the courage to fucking say it. It's okay. So, this is an SDG&E worker fired over alleged racist gesture, says he was cracking knuckles. It all started about 2 weeks ago near a Black Lives Matter rally in Poway when Emmanuel Cafferty, a San Diego Gas and Electric employee, encountered a stranger on the roadway. The stranger followed Cafferty and took a picture of him as his arm hung out of the window of his company truck. The picture made the rounds on Twitter, accompanied by a claim Cafferty was making a white power hand gesture made popular by white supremacist groups. According to the Anti-Defamation League, who have been completely politically compromised, the gesture made by forming a circle with the thumb and index finger and extending and separating the other 3 fingers has been used in recent years by white supremacists to form the letter W and P. Right? By the way, that's the hoax. That's how you know it's the hoax. But it's also long been used as a sign signifying okay or approval. Therefore, it shouldn't be assumed to be white supremacy unless there's evidence to support those claims. That's all right. We don't... Context? No! Hysteria? Yeah! Mob them! Drag them! Get them! Cafferty claims he was just cracking his knuckles. Soon after the encounter, a supervisor of Cafferty's told him he was suspended and that further action may be taken after an investigation. A few days later, he says he was fired. Cafferty maintains he was unaware of the hand gesture until the whole controversy started. When my supervisor said I was being accused of doing a white supremacist gesture, that was baffling. I don't know how long it's going to take me to get over this, but to lose your dream job for playing with your fingers, that's a hard pill to swallow. By the way, there's the white supremacy symbol. There it is. There's the crime. Now, by the way, I can get you pictures of Obama, AOC, Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, you fucking name it, Joe Biden. I can get all of them doing the exact same thing. Weird. Context matters when my team does it. And again, we're allowing this. No one's outraged at this. The general reaction to this on Twitter, by the way, were people going, yeah, he probably was a white supremacist. I mean, there was a Black Lives Matter rally nearby. He's in his work truck at traffic lights. Nobody said, who's this creepy cunt following this guy, this working man, filming him, waiting for his hand to be in a... Why? What did he do? Cut you off in traffic? What's it really about? Now, strange looking white supremacist. That's but again, we're just told we have to just swallow this stuff.
A local SDG&E worker has been fired after allegations of racism were made against him. Now he's speaking exclusively
It went on standby mode
about what he calls a major misunderstanding. He says his employer jumped to conclusions and he should not have lost his job. Priya Shrithar has the story.
It all started about 2 weeks ago near a Black Lives Matter rally in Poway. Emmanuel Cafferty says he had an interaction with a member of the public that later got posted on Twitter. He says shortly after he was fired by his employer.
Controversial photo, guys. It's controversial.
That Emmanuel Cafferty says started it all. It shows an SDG&E worker making a hand gesture that some say is a white supremacist sign.
When my supervisor said that I was being accused of doing a white supremacist gesture, that was baffling.
Cafferty is the...
Yep, there you go. That was baffling. It baffles me, mate. I feel sorry for you. Another working man during a pandemic. Fuck your money, fuck your paper, because the journalists require this fucking lie to perpetuate that, ooh, there's a white supremacist under your bed. Look what he's doing with his hands. Look, he's posted a cartoon frog. We know these are lies. We know none of this is real. But we just, oh, please don't come for me. Please, can I have my things? What about this one? Jeopardy slammed for winner's alleged white power hand gesture. Hundreds of former contestants demand an apology for winner Kelly Donahue's hand gesture, while Donahue says it's all a terrible misunderstanding. Well, look, another fucking Jobsworth loser on fucking Twitter. Right, so here's the thing. This guy was a 3-time winner on Jeopardy. So he did that. That's 4. I can't even count. He did that. And people this guy ran with it, and then everyone came along for the ride. Manuel D. Glenn. Tim Scott says America isn't a racist country, while this guy flashes the white power symbol. It is not a white power symbol. It has never been a white power symbol. No white supremacists are going around doing this to each other. Because what would be the point now anyway? You figured out the dog whistle, guys. So they would change, wouldn't they? You wouldn't do it in the middle of fucking Jeopardy, would you? While this guy flashes the white power symbol on Jeopardy. So, let's read this. A group of 467 purported former participants. By the way, what is this? Why do you think you're fucking important because you appeared on fucking Jeopardy? Us, the former contestants of Jeopardy. It's a fucking game show, you twat. You haven't fucking cured cancer, have you? You're not a doctor. You're not a fucking scientist. You went on a game show once. Well done. Yes, us, the undersigned, noble, former contestants, would like to condemn one of our number, 467 fucking losers. Wannabe cop fucking losers sign this. 467 purported former participants on the show posted an open letter on Medium on Wednesday accusing the syndicated game show's producers of failing to catch what they allege is a white power hand gesture on Tuesday, when winner Kelly Donahue was introduced as having won 3 games. He held his thumb and forefinger together with his other 3 fingers extended and palm facing inward, and he tapped his chest. Donahue counted on Facebook. The gesture was just meant to confirm he had won 3 games, and noted he had previously flashed 1 finger and then 2 during his introductions for the earlier games. Right, now at this point, guys, Right, at this point, here's what I also fucking hate about this fucking gibberish big head for this, right? Why is the assumption always the worst? Why is it that what happens at your worst is that's when the mask comes off, guys? That's when the real you is exposed. So the perfectly normal, innocent explanation, and by the way, they had this similar hysteria over people playing the circle game. They had hysteria over a black basketball player, like, holding up the three after he made a three-pointer going, well, look at all this internalized, you've got to snap out of it, America. You have got to come back to the light. You are fucking insane right now. How stupid you are. What's more likely, that the guy who went 1, 2, and 3 was doing a white power symbol, or that after winning 3 times and having done 1, 2, and 3 for each of his previous games, he's just holding up 3 fingers? Which one is more likely? And if you think it's more likely that he is a secret, clandestine, white supremacist who has finally worked his way into the 3rd game on Jeopardy, and that is when he decides, now is the time to signal to white supremacists all over the world, because white supremacists love to watch Jeopardy. They're sat there waiting for one of their own to ascend, and now they're going to do the secret symbol, and we're going to rise up. We're going to rise up. If you think that, you need to be in psychiatric care yesterday. If you think that, you are mentally ill, you are deranged, and you are a danger to fucking society. The end. You should not be allowed on the internet. You are making it a fucking sewer. You need to get help, get better, and then come back. That's all there is to it. There is no other solution. That is it, right? Think about what you are saying, for fuck's sake. It is staggering to me. Which one is more likely? I ask you, just do it on the basis of likelihood. Just do it on the basis of likelihood. But no, we can't do that, can we? Because drag him, get him. We need this lie that everyone is terrible, everyone is a secret, terrible, evil racist, and they're just waiting for one moment, and we've got to be vigilant, and we've got to catch them, and only we can do it, because we're the good guys. We live in this fucked up fantasy world where we're the most important fucking person in the fucking story. It's fucking ridiculous. But when he did 3 fingers following his 3rd win. So now, no joke, the Hollywood Reporter is about to rationalize why it's okay to imply he's a white supremacist. When he did the 3 fingers, he made a gesture similar to the OK symbol made by a right-wing militia group called the 3 Percenters, who I guarantee this guy has never fucking heard of, and 99.9% of people, even in America, have never fucking heard of. That has also been co-opted by white power groups. The former contestants say the popular game show's producers should have recognized how the gesture could be interpreted and prevented it from ever shown on the air. This gesture was not a clear-cut symbol for the number 3. The letter said. I mean, I'm looking at it. It looks like 3 fingers to me, guys. I don't know. The gesture was not a clear-cut symbol for the number 3, the letter said, regardless of Donahue's intent. And this is the other thing. Context, dead. Context, dead. Intent, curb stomped, dead. Your intent doesn't matter. Your intent doesn't matter. Think about that. Your intent doesn't matter. It's how I take it. Another fucking trick to empower cop losers on the internet. What you intend doesn't matter. Of course what I intend matters. Of course intent matters. It matters everywhere, in every aspect and facet of our lives. In the judicial courts, in relationships, of course it matters. Regardless of Donahue's stated intent, the gesture is a racist dog whistle. I mean, again, if he doesn't know that, how can it be? Some of the first people to notice this were not affiliated with Jeopardy in any way. They were viewers who couldn't believe what they'd seen, captured it on video and shared it to Twitter. Good old Twitter. Fucking, that website. I'm only being kind of half joking when I say it's one of the worst things to happen to humanity. Among them were people of colour who, needless to say, are attuned to racist messages and not appreciative that the show allowed this symbol to be broadcast. It was perceived by people across demographic boundaries as a wink and a nod by white men about their superiority. Leaving this messaging unchecked will encourage others to attempt similar things in the future. Is the production team of Jeopardy prepared for more of this? Prepared for more attempts to disguise contempt as innocent gesturing? Prepared for the backlash and ramifications should one of those moments ever become tied to real-world violence? The letter also said Donahue had responded to a clue with a term for the Roma that is considered a slur. Oh, that was in his response. He used the G word, guys. We know that contestants sign morals and ethics related agreements when they prepare to appear on the show. And we would ask the production team to evaluate the situation within the framework, the letter concluded. We really hope to see a statement and a disavowal of both of this week's events, and we would like to see Jeopardy address Kelly's behaviour. Ridiculous. Now, we did get, right, sort of kind of a little moment of sanity. We got like a little island of sanity, right? And that was this, the Atlantic, right? Not the place you'd expect it. Oh, it's down at the moment, no problem. Stop firing the innocent. America does need a reckoning over racism. Punishing people who did not do anything wrong harms that important cause. And of course, yeah, this is the other aspect of it I haven't talked about, right? This is the other aspect where it's like, listen, you make people so fucking just jaded and like they just look over now at the progressives as just wretched, bitter, spiteful, cruel, self-obsessed, self-important people. And you go, listen, do I want to engage in a community that I know one day will just ultimately turn on me and destroy me because I can't constantly pass the daily fucking purity test? One day I will fail. One day I will disagree. One day I'll say something they don't like. Or shall I just stay over here and not get involved with your shit? Yeah, actually, that's the best option, isn't it? That's the best option for a quiet life, you know, things most of us aspire to have. And this lists a ton of examples, including the Emmanuel Cafferty one that I brought up, where, again, I was very surprised the Atlantic tells the truth and says he didn't do anything. Talks about David Shaw, who basically talked about mathematical parallels between how, it says here, post the assassination of Martin Luther King, race riots reduced the Democratic vote share in surrounding counties by 2%, which was enough to give the election to Nixon. Non-violent protests increased the Democratic vote, mainly by encouraging warm elite discourse and media coverage. That was it. That was the tweet. That was what he did. And this tweet overlapped with the protests, again, around the George Floyd murder, and so people went fucking crazy about it, and so he got fired. He got fired from his job. He just worked for an analytics company. That's all he did a tweet, cited some stats saying, hey, listen, violent protests actually push people away from liberal movements and democratic agenda, which, you know, obvious, right? And he just lost his job over that. What's the harm? What's so bad about that? Majdi Wadi, I'll read you this. This is a particularly sad one. Majdi Wadi, life is a testament to the opportunities America offers immigrants and refugees. He came to Minneapolis from Palestine and started a business called Holy Land, a food and catering company that now employs nearly 200 people. The local press is full of articles lauding his achievements and his determination to give back to the community. On the company's 25th anniversary, Representative Keith Ellison, now the Attorney General of Minnesota, celebrated it in a short speech on the floor and House of Representatives. Where I came from, you have no right to dream, Wadi told me. Here, after a while, I realized you can dream. And then I realized you can achieve your dreams. And then I realized the sky is the limit. And then I realized beyond the sky is the limit. But Wadi's American dream came crashing down to earth on June 4th, when his 24-year-old daughter admitted to him she had written a series of deeply racist and anti-Semitic posts on Twitter and Instagram when she was 14 years old. An activist had drawn public attention to these posts after stumbling across an especially noxious one. The same day, Wadi did what he describes as one of the toughest things I've ever had to do in my life. He fired his daughter from a position as the company's catering director. Neither Wadi's long standing in the community nor his quick action to sever his company's ties with his own daughter salvaged his company. Nearly all of his business partners cancelled their contracts. His landlord terminated the bakery's lease. After he saw his life's work evaporate in a few days, Wadi reluctantly told me he has struggled to sustain his belief in the American dream. All that I'm asking is that everyone who cancelled our lease, who threw out our products, who was calling for a boycott of our produce, give us a chance to prove that this is not who we are. This is the wonderful world of cancel culture, guys. And remember, it's not real. It's not happening. It's just privileged and wealthy people, not immigrants that flee dangerous situations and tyrannical regimes and build a new life for themselves through hard work They're the people who are getting hurt by this, right? That's the fucking sick irony about it. In the name of progressivism and making the world better and holding people accountable, it's actually the marginalised people that get fucked over. The working class, the immigrants. And nothing will save you. You can't even renounce your own daughter to appease these people. Every time, it must be the most vicious, mean outcome, and only that. Because that's the only way you'll learn. Have nothing, be nothing, return to zero. Despite of that, it's evil. That's what that is. And again, Twitter. Right at the heart of it. Twitter and journalists that think tweets are news, blowing it up. Journalists on the phone ringing up Keith Ellison. You formerly lauded this man, and now his daughter said something racist when she was 14. Oh, well, I fully disavow midterms, tanked an entire company. What about the people who lose their jobs off the back of that? Not just him losing his business. All the people who work for that business, gone. They did nothing. Cancel culture don't care. When it comes for you, and it will, and it does, it will strip you of everything. And it'll strip those around you of everything. And that's the design. Because it's not about making the world a better place. It never was. It's about selfish power fantasies. It's about people with too much fucking time on their hands. They're terminally online, getting to feel like they fucking matter for 5 minutes. It's about clout. It's about likes. It's about engagement. It's for sport. It's digital fox hunting. But everyone can be the fox. Fuck that. And fuck anyone who tells you that it's not real and it's not happening. I could give you another fucking 24 examples of just regular working folk that get fucked over. Meanwhile, if you tell a journalist, learn to code on Twitter, they ban you for hurting their feelings. Let me also just go into how sort of pernicious this has been and how kind of prevalent, it's here to stay, right? We're not getting rid of it. I can sit here and say, don't engage in it, don't do it, don't engage in it. But it doesn't matter because somebody will. Genie's out the bottle. This is the norm now. We all have to live like this now. This is from the Pew Research Center, Americans and Cancel Culture, where some see calls for accountability, others see censorship and punishment. And if you go and look at the data, you can see here, 44% of Americans had heard at least a fair amount about the phrase cancel culture. They were familiar with it. You can see here, US adults, women in general had heard of it more. And also, interestingly enough, some of the boomers. But let's have a look at the definitions of cancel culture, because again, this is all part of the issue. It's divided across political lines like everything else in America is. You can see action taken to hold others accountable, and you can see that the further you get towards the liberal-leaning Dem, the more likely you are to agree with that statement. Censorship of speech or history, Republicans, strong uptake for that one. And only 6% of people leaning towards liberal or Dems. Mean-spirited actions taken to cause harm. Not really a lot for that, but again, low. People cancelling anyone they disagree with. Again, low. Those who are challenged face consequences like being fired or boycotted. An attack on traditional American society. Strong uptake from the Republicans there. Not so much from the Dems. A way to call out racism. Republicans say absolutely not. Dems are, yeah, kind of, but not just. And you can see that the majority of people believe actually cancel culture's good, and it is a way to hold people accountable for their actions. 58% of US adults feel that way now. We've been fucking conditioned to accept it. Been conditioned to live like that. Well, anyway, I'll see if I can dig it out for the next video. Put it on that. But basically, there was another study done where actually it said like most people were afraid of being cancelled and afraid of cancel culture. And actually what was interesting was the more people that attended diversity and inclusiveness training at work, the more likely they were to be terrified of it. They didn't feel they had the requisite tools suddenly to traverse it. They became more hyper aware of it and more scared on average. But I'll try and dig that out for you for the next one. Let's get to the kind of end of this chapter of it. And let's just point out kind of where we're at. Now, I don't want to get into all of the whole thing about, McCarthyism and, how it's like the house of un-American activities. There are mad parallels to it, definitely. And if anybody knows anything about what happened to all the people who were deemed a communist in the 50s and 60s, well, end of the 50s, there was people who were put on blacklists. They were literally just you couldn't work in Hollywood, or if you did, you had to do it under an assumed name, or you had to do it from separate, kind of overseas funded projects, or sometimes you had to go overseas and ply your trade. Actors, writers, people like that, especially anyone that was around Hollywood, you got. And, there was a lot of that going on. It's what the Arthur Miller play The Crucible is all about. It's not really about the Salem witch trials. It's really about the McCarthy witch hunts. But anyway, the problem we've got is it's sort of become baked into the model of all social media existence. Now, you can't get away from it. You can spend some time and look into this. Let me show you this. This is something on a website called Beautiful Trouble. Beautiful Trouble is an activist's toolbook, and this is how sort of codified cancel culture efforts are. And like I say, people know this because the activists that engage with this to attack the powerful people, they're the people that use this methodology to attack the normal people. And so Beautiful Trouble are basically an activist group, and you can see here there is a whole thing. They call it power mapping, and it's got a very benign sounding term, doesn't it? Power mapping. What power mapping is, this picture is grotesque. This picture is grotesque. You see here, right? Look at the scale. So it's influential people at the top, not influential at the bottom. People who agree with you on this side and people who disagree with you on that side. And you can see you, not influential, down here. Target, disagree and influential, but not to the greatest degree. And then you map out the people you want to target. So you go after peers, you go after family, you go after who funds them, you go after their boss, you go after their church. There's a whole handbook on this. How to use. And you just go and read this. I'm not going to read you the whole thing. It's insane. This was meant to be applied to corporations doing evil shit, and we now apply it to each other. We power map each other's lives. How to use. Identify the problems you are trying to fix. Expand your knowledge until you have a broad understanding of the issue and the forces involved. Wink, wink. Step 2. Identify the main stakeholders. These stakeholders generally include those responsible for creating the problem, those who have the power to fix the problem but aren't, those who are geographically relevant to the issue, those who are working to fix the problem, and don't forget to include you and your group too. You'll end up with a long list of institutions, both formal and informal organizations, influential people, media, and assorted individuals that are relevant to your issue. Keep this list handy. Step 3, research the stakeholders. There are some institutions on your list, but institutions don't make decisions. People do. You've got to find out who makes the decisions in those institutions. And then you have to try to answer a few questions about these people. Do they agree or disagree with you on this issue? How much power do they have over the issue? And then you create your chart. Step 4, plot where all of the stakeholders stand. Draw out a version of power mapping axes on a board or big chart paper. Put each stakeholder on its own post-it. Then depending on how supportive they are and how much power they have over the issue, you can place them on the board. Step 5, identify your primary target. Remember, this is a manual for harassment, right? It's codified. This is the point when you figure out who has the most influence over the issue and who is most likely to give you what you want. The perfect target, and perfection rarely exists in real life, that's why we cancel people, would be both very powerful and already supportive, or at least easily accessible and open to supporting you. The hardest target to move, but the kind you will often face and be forced to take on, is someone with a lot of power who strongly disagrees with you. If you can't decide on a single primary target, but only have the capacity to focus on one, proceed to the next step with your most likely candidates. The next step looks at your proximity or potential to reach each target and may help you choose which one is the best to focus on. Step 6, map the power relationships around your primary target. Take the post-it of the stakeholder you've identified as your primary target and place it in the middle of another big sheet of paper. Are they influenced by any of the other names you have written down on the post-its? Who can sway them? Arrange the other stakeholder post-its on the big paper in relationship to the key target. Draw circles and arrows or relationships similar to power mapping relationships. Make sure to include yourself and your potential relationship to all these stakeholders. Step 7, map the power relationships around your secondary targets. You may not be able to move your primary target directly. The only way to get to them is through other stakeholders you've identified in step 6 who have some influence on them. These are your secondary targets, but who are they influenced by? To find out, make a separate power map for each of these stakeholders. Power mapping can be meticulous work. Again, include yourself and your potential relationship to anyone on this diagram so it's clear how to proceed with campaign planning. Step 8. Use this analysis to plan your campaign. Now, make sure to actually use this research and analysis to create a plan that targets those who can actually give you what you want rather than just the people you can reach easily. Step 9, revisit and revise. At key campaign junctures and as power shifts or you learn more about who holds it, revisit and revise these maps as needed. You'll know when. Power mapping, guys. This is what we do to each other, to everyone, just on a daily basis. Used to be for activists. And you can go and look that up and read it in your own time. And, you know, I don't like to bandy the phrase Orwellian around, but it's fucking nightmarish stuff. And basically that is literally how, like, Media Matters for America, all these DNC PACs operate. Sleeping Giants. I mean, there's another one. I don't know if you guys have heard of Sleeping Giants. Let me give you an example of how power mapping plays out, wrote large, just in every day. Here we go. Now, I don't know if you remember when Kanye West, when he was having another one of his episodes, and let's remember, Kanye West is somebody who has really suffered with mental health issues and is in the public eye, has gone through a very difficult divorce. I feel really sorry for the dude. I think things that have happened in his personal life, combined with his underlying bipolar condition, have made, and just the pressures of fame and being in the public eye are really, really difficult. And around about the time he said he was going to run for president and all this other stuff, he said a bunch of controversial shit, you know, as people with underlying issues are. And he'd said that in a video, he said slavery was a choice, which of course it wasn't. And there was absolutely nothing that would back that up. But that was him expressing his opinion of a historical issue, a historical topic, through the lens of a black man. Now, I was always told to listen to black voices and to elevate, where possible, black voices and black opinions. Sleeping Giants is a company that goes after anyone that doesn't toe the progressive DNC line and looks to take away their sponsors, advertisers, money, endorsements, platforms. And they do it using the model of power mapping. And so you end up with situations like this where they're allowed to exist on Twitter, despite Twitter saying, we care about the health of a conversation, and they can go after anyone and everyone. And they used the power mapping model, and they said, listen, how can Adidas have a fucking collaboration with Kanye West and pump out Yeezys after he said that? Athletes have lost endorsements for far less than saying that slavery was a choice. Well, indeed they have. Let me show you one such example, because it's not going to bottom out. It's going to continue to escalate and get more ridiculous. Check this out. The Washington Commanders defensive tackle, Jonathan Allen, apologized for tweeting he'd like to dine with Hitler. Now, that is as bad a way as you can write up what actually happened, but let's explore this. Washington Commanders defensive tackle Jonathan Allen apologized for a since-deleted tweet in which he said Adolf Hitler was one of 3 people, living or dead, with whom he'd like to have dinner. Now, I'm sure you've all seen that exercise people do. If you could have a meal with 3 people, living or dead, anyone from all of history, who would you choose? And you say 3 interesting people, don't you? 3 wild people. 3 people who might not get along with everyone else around the table. So this was years ago, I think, where he did an AMA. He said, ask me anything. They said, which 3 people, dead or alive, would you want to have dinner with? And Alan said, my granddad, Hitler, and Michael Jackson. You'll notice, not so much outrage over Michael Jackson. Not great choices, to be fair. But anyway, he tried to explain it, and he said, and this is where it goes sideways. He's a military genius, but honestly, I'd want to pick his brain as to why he did what he did. I'm assuming that the people I've chosen have to answer all my questions honestly. So in other words, he wanted to get an insight into the evil Hitler perpetrated by asking Hitler himself in a theoretical thought exercise. What's the problem? Why is a black man having to apologize for that? What? I don't fucking understand who this helps. The odds are already stacked against him. He plays in the NFL. I mean, first of all, he plays for the Washington Commanders. I mean, spare a fucking thought. But then, he plays in the NFL, so he's got to get through without a career-ending injury, chronic CTE and pain in his later years, or just going bankrupt, but make him apologise for a fucking silly tweet. Try and imply he's a secret racist. It's just madness, guys. It's just mental. And like I say, they tell you none of this is going on. It's going on every day. It's affecting everybody. It's just lunacy at this point. It's actual lunacy. So look, I'm going to leave the cancel culture stuff there, but we are going to get back to it because obviously for the second part, we'll look at all that Whoopi Goldberg shit. We will look at all the Joe Rogan shit. The Joe Rogan stuff has been going on for so long. I have currently got scripted 5 pages just of links that relates to the history of the attacks on Joe Rogan. If you're feeling spry and you want to do some homework, go watch my Enemy of the People video about it. It's just called Dewormer. You can go look that up. We will revisit this topic because it's something that needs to be written down. It's something that needs to be looked at. It's something that I have to believe is going to go away at some point. Because it's not helpful to anybody, and the journalists can lie about it as much as they want. It's real, it's awful, and it's affected all of us in some way, even if it's just the minor inconvenience of an artist you like not being on a platform of your choice anymore.